My show, Olio. My name is Susan Rushton, and I need, as always, to explain what olio means. One definition is that it's short for olla podrida, which is Spanish for rotten bowl, which I just get such a kick out of. It's a Spanish-Portuguese dish with essentially everything in the world in it. Chicken and pork and chorizo and beef and olives and garlic and onions and pumpkin. As I said, everything in the world except maple syrup and decaf coffee. That's one definition. Another definition is that olio is what comes in between acts of a melodrama. So you might have somebody juggling, you might have somebody singing, you might have somebody doing a skit, and none of it has anything to do with anything else, and none of it has anything to do with the melodrama. So in other words, it's apples, oranges, and a monkey wrench. So welcome to my monkey wrench. Today my guests are three writers, and usually I have a writing show once a year, but I've just decided to do it again because Olio's my show, as I said. My guests are Cindy Sample. Thank you, Cindy. Cindy's website is cindysamplebooks.com, and we'll do that again. And Jeri Chase Ferris. Welcome, Jeri.
Thank you.
And Jeri's website is jerichaseferris.com, and Robin Rice. And to nobody's surprise, Robin Rice's website is robinmartinezrice.com. So we've got this wonderful trio of quartet of writers right here. My website, by the way, is rushtonwrites.com. It's sort of a work in progress, as is most of our writing is a work in progress. So, colleagues, welcome. And so the way this works is that we will be asking questions of each other, because I want to be part of this too. So, what do you write? I get to ask that. Sorry, Bill. I get to answer that first. What I write is, I write an opinion column for the Auburn Journal. I'm working on self-publishing those, about 110 or so of those columns, which I've written since 1987. I also am considering working on a book about classic comedies from 1930 through 1950. Among other things. But I'm here to, I could go on. but let's talk about you. Cindy, what do you write?
Well, I write a humorous romantic mystery series set in El Dorado County. The first book was Dying for a Date, and the second book that you can see, Dying for a Dance, is sort of a cross between Murder, She Wrote and Dancing with the Stars. And it was actually a finalist for the Lefty for Best Humorous Mystery of 2011.
Now tell me what the Lefty is.
The Lefty is an award for Best Humorous Mystery. So these are fluffy mysteries.
On the left side of the
side of the coast, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but actually there were some international authors that were nominated as well. So basically you have dead bodies, but they're far, far away. and a lot of heavy. I call my series heavy on the humor, light on the homicide.
Excellent.
Good.
Well, congratulations on that award. That's wonderful.
Yeah, it was exciting.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. Jeri, what do you write?
I write nonfiction and historical fiction and newspaper columns as well for the Lincoln News Messenger. My newest book is a biography, picture book biography of Noah Webster, which will be out from Hote and Mifflin Harcourt next month.
I am so envious.
On October 23rd, and it is already a Junior Library Guild selection and has a starred review from School Library Journal. And Kirkus says a wonderful success and just lots of great reviews. So I'm very, very happy about that. And the thing about Noah Webster is everybody knows Noah Webster. We know the dictionary.
Yeah.
But you may not know what else he did. So
and
this
in this book you tell us.
Tells us, well, it tells it about the dictionary and how he happened to write the dictionary, but also what else he did for our country. Actually, Noah Webster was very instrumental. In fact, he was the most instrumental in keeping our country united at the time of the Revolution, when it was about to fall into 13 separate states. Well, anyway, read the book.
Okay.
And you'll find out. And I also write, these are also my other 11 biographies, which have been previously published.
Congratulations.
Thank
That's
you.
wonderful.
And I also write historical fiction, which my next book will be, it's called The Last Mouse in Leningrad, and it has to do with the siege of Leningrad in World War II.
Okay. Okay.
Because
well,
Russia
thank
is
you.
my passion. So.
Yeah. Well, thank you,
Thank you.
Jeri. Robin, what do you write?
Oh, I write a combination of magical, mystical, historical fiction in the Southwest, based in the Southwest. And my first book should be published in January. And it is the story of a young Latina who, her name is Perfecta Trujillo, and in 1941 she decides she's not going to be perfect anymore. And she discovers that it's difficult to live in a world that has also decided not to be perfect anymore.
1941.
1941,
Okay.
yeah. So we'll see that soon. And the book I'm currently working on is also in the Southwest. And it's a combination of current and historical. And so we have some kind of alternating flashbacks into the 1400s.
Oh, interesting.
Wow. Okay. When will that be published? Do you know?
Probably late 2013.
Okay. Well, congratulations. I'm envious. All right, Cindy,
So I get
take the bowl and look at the question.
Okay. Who are your writing role models? So I should answer that.
Yes.
Yes, definitely. Well, early on, my first role model were the Nancy Drew books, and I wanted to grow up and become Carolyn Keene, but my tastes are pretty expansive. I have a lot of authors that I really admire, but I would say the ones my style is more similar to Harlan Coben, thriller. I like fast-paced mysteries. I like very good characterizations, a good plot line, nothing too dark. Like I say, I like my dead bodies far, far away, so
Yeah.
nothing too graphic. So I would say that, and I've read all of the classics, but we're not going to be here long enough for
All
me
of
to list
the
all of
classics,
those.
huh?
I've read a lot of classics.
Okay.
Going
All
back.
right.
Okay.
Thank you. Jeri.
Okay, well, when I was young, I read all the Black Stallion series because I'm also a horse person, but that's not now. So now I would say authors like Linda Sue Park, Richard Peck. I'm speaking now about young adult
Young
and
adult,
children's
yes,
authors.
yes.
Christopher Curtis, Lois Lowry, just many others. But in that genre, people who've won, the big Newberries, the big awards. I would love to be able to do that.
Yeah.
So I read to see how do they do it.
Yes. Yeah.
Not that it's helped, but still.
I disagree.
Well, thank
You
you.
may not have won those big awards, but
Not yet.
but clearly you have respect. Yes. Robin.
Every book I read is a role model right now because I'm a new writer, and so I'm learning still, and I analyze everything I read constantly. But Geraldine Brooks is one of my favorite writers because she, of course, does the same back through the time period. Currently, I am newly in love with Jennifer Dubois, a young author who wrote A Partial History of Lost Causes. It was published this year, and been lucky enough to hook up with her. She's a Northern California author, and get some tutoring from her.
Last weekend.
Wow.
Nice.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. My role models, at least one is Peter S. Beagle. He writes fantasy, and it's not necessarily because he writes fantasy that I admire him so much. And every time I mention to people that what he writes, I feel obligated to apologize. But because fantasy sort of, oh yeah, fantasy. But he's such a wonderful writer, and he cares so much about me. Sorry. Anyway, I always feel in such good hands with that guy, in a way that I don't feel with many other authors. He's just a fabulous writer who understands about the necessity for specific examples I don't know, just really loving the reader more than anything else.
And somebody you can count on with every book,
Absolutely.
which is really important.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
yes. Okay.
I pass on the bowl?
Yes.
All right. Okay.
And the winner is.
The winner is. What do you look for in your own writing? Oh my. Okay, why don't you begin?
No, you,
I
you
begin.
get, you pick the question.
Oh, okay. What do you look for in your own writing? Well, I look for what I see in Linda Sue Park's writing, for example, in the Newbery Award winners. But what I look for is after I've written, and I've written and rewritten and rewritten, then I look for what I need to take out. I take out the telling. I take out the spots that people are going to skip over, I hope.
Harlan Ellison, didn't he say that?
Someone famous said that, yeah. I take out the long descriptive parts that may be too tedious.
But that you worked so hard on.
Yes, but
Even
we
so.
have to kill the things we love sometimes.
Yeah.
And I want to, someone has to, you have to care. The reader has to love my character or you're not going to read it. And that's what I look for in these books that I try to emulate. Why did I want to keep reading? How did she do it? And how can I do it? So that's what I look for in my own writing.
All right.
Okay, so.
Great. Robin.
Oh, in my own writing, what I'm looking for is I want to take every reader on a journey with which they become so engaged that as the character changes and learns and grows, so do they. I want them to just be right in there. I've spent my working career as an educational psychologist, and so I guess I still want to do psychology on people, even when I'm writing a novel.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Cindy.
Oh, my turn. Well, I say the top priority for me is to entertain. There's a lot of darkness going on in the world in the news today, and I like to feel that I'm providing a bright spot. In fact, someone that bought my first book, Dying for a Date, told me she'd gone through a divorce, that it was the best thing that had happened to her in a year. And she was laughing so hard that tears were rolling down her face. So my first priority is to bring smiles, but of course I want it to be well written. I want the pacing to be good. I tend to write very lean. Dialogue is my strength, humor and action, and then I actually will go back and add the description. But because pacing is important, it needs to be fresh. I don't want it to be dull or anything.
I could loan you some.
Like that. Thank you. That'll save me some time. The hardest part when you're writing funny mysteries is you walk a line between where to put the humor and where to have the suspense.
Yeah.
And when in doubt, there are so many people that write wonderful suspenseful books, but only a few of us that are successful at combining the two. I go with the funny line because that's what I do, and I keep it light. So,
Okay.
yeah. And then when I'm done with, let's see, the first 4 or 5 versions, I read through every single word. With the last book, 4 times I read through each of the 80,000 words to make sure it was the best word it could be. So,
Yes.
you know,
Okay.
sometimes you have to do that.
Yes, absolutely. What do you look for what do I look for in my own writing? I look for clarity. I look for simplicity. I look for the right word. I look for the presence of active verbs and the absence of modifiers, by which I mean here's instead of a falling down crummy old house, a shack.
Right.
Because the fewer words, the quicker the reader can get to the point, and the rerun of Friends is on in 10 minutes. That's what I look for
Word
in my
painting.
Yeah, that's what I look for in my own writing.
May I add one thing?
Please.
Speaking of taking out words, when I sent Noah Webster the manuscript to my editor at Houghton Mifflin, I had at the top 5,000 words, and I sent it to her. And she sent back her notes, and on the top she'd crossed out 5,000 words, and she wrote, "Not anymore."
What a perfect editor. Yeah, she subtracted. Okay, great.
I keep those cut lines in a separate file on my computer and think one day I'll write a story called Cut Lines.
Oh, that's good. That's good.
Okay, Robin.
Okay. What advice do you have for writers? Okay. Well, I always have a lot of advice, even if I'm brand new. I try to write every single day, and I write and write and write and write and write. And to me, that keeps me engaged with my character. It keeps me in the book where I need to be, and it just improves my skills. Every sentence I write, whether I throw it away or keep it or use it. And I also take a lot of classes and just hang out with other writers, which is a good thing. And the other thing, I think that if you want a career as a writer, is coming up soon, and I did it last year. It's called National Novel Writing Month, NaNoWriMo. And the goal is to write 50,000 words in the month of November. And it makes you just write.
Did you do it last year?
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
And I don't
Good
know
for
if
you.
it'll ever be a book, but I learned a lot.
Yeah.
I learned a lot.
Wow. Okay. Thank you. Jeri.
Advice for writers. Well, read. Read, read, read. I go to the library and I take out all the books. I'm thinking of one on Abraham Lincoln right now, and the Transcontinental Railway. So I go to the library and I take out all the books that have already been written and books that are like that, just to see, first of all, what's been done and the genre in which I want to put it and the age level and so on. So read, read, read. Read in the genre that you're writing. That's what I say to writers. And also join groups, join critique groups, because it's a very lonely business. I mean, it's just me and my computer and my dog. So I'm in several critique groups, which are immensely helpful. As a children's book writer, I'm in the International Society for Children's Book Writers and Illustrators. That's scbwi.org, which is absolutely crucial to belong to. And I like your advice to write every day. Would that I followed it.
Okay. All right.
Well, I have met so many people doing author appearances, and I heard once that 85% of people have a story in them. And it is amazing how many people have a story, but they'll come to me and they'll say, I'm afraid to write because I may write the wrong word. And the great answer is there is no such thing as the wrong word. You know, just get it down on paper because you can edit. And I love editing. You could change every word. So don't be afraid of that screen or that piece of paper. You know, just let it out there. And then once you start going, then start taking classes on writing, read plenty of books on writing, read books again to learn from that. And there's wonderful groups like we met at Sisters in Crime for mystery writers. There's a romance writers. There's California writers. There are so many groups locally. This is such a nurturing community. I've just been thrilled to meet and associate with different people. And you're always learning your craft, which is a great thing.
Yeah.
You know.
Okay.
So that's my advice. And even though they do say you should write every day, there are a few oddball ones like me. I am a binge writer. So I can write for a whole week, and I can write 12 hours a day. And then I go on my merry author appearance way and then come back to the writing.
Yes.
So there's no rules.
So the question is, what advice do you have for writers? One of my comfortable pieces of advice, I spoke to a woman for whom I was editing her stuff, and she said, I really like this author, and I said, why? And she said, well, it's da, 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 da. And I said, well, you're reading her as a reader. Read as a writer. What is it about this person's writing that attracts you? If you're nervous reading her or him, why? If you're excited, if you find yourself weeping, why? If you find yourself laughing, how did this person accomplish that? And none of that is easy. But investigating, looking at these words and these paragraphs as writers, reading as a writer instead of reading as a reader, although both are important.
Yeah, right. So it's important to buy paperback books so that we can mark. Libraries don't really like that.
I think that's one of the things I've really discovered, though, is I do always read as a writer now, which is very different.
Yes, it is.
And it's much harder to write than I ever thought it was going to be, but it's also much easier. I mean, you know, the revision
impressed.
is the hard part.
Yeah.
But the story to tell and having the flow and the arc and every, you know, the parts of a story that make a story make you cry or keep reading. Or
Yeah. Well, talking about this constant revision that we do in this editing, I mean, it can go on for years. A friend of mine in LA said, why should I spend so many years writing a book when I could just so easily buy one?
Wow. And what's the answer?
It's interesting.
What's the answer?
Well, the answer is you're an author, so you write the book.
Yes.
You don't.
Yeah.
I buy a lot of books too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Another piece of advice is a friend of mine has a friend who is a writer, but he could never work up the courage to send it out anywhere because what if I'm rejected? Honey, you're going to be rejected. You're a writer. Get used to it. You need the skin of a rhinoceros, and so you might as well start now.
Right, and people say, congratulations, this is your first rejection. Now you're on your way.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, Susan, I think you're the one that taught me to email authors. If there was a book I really enjoyed, to email them and let them know that I enjoyed the book. And I have been doing that and getting replies. And Jennifer Dubois, who I spoke to last weekend, said it was wonderful to get an email that wasn't saying, on page 72, you blah, blah, blah. You know, that writers really do appreciate those emails from readers.
Oh,
That's
do you
wonderful.
know I got a typewritten letter 2 days ago. I've written back to the woman in Colorado to ask if I can use her name, but it was a typewritten letter, and I haven't seen a typewritten letter for a long, long time. And she was talking about my Native American book and how it brought tears to her eyes, and she went on, and I was just flabbergasted. And so I want to be able to put it on my website or something, you know.
Absolutely.
It's just amazing.
Sure.
Oh, there's nothing better than that, especially if you're struggling with a scene or whatever, and then you get an email from a fan, and it's like, thank you, okay, I can do it now.
Yes.
Yeah. So
Yes.
even if she says, no, I do not want that, you know, to appear anywhere, I'll paste it up in front of me on the
Absolutely.
computer. Yeah.
Yes. Wonderful. Okay. What's the hardest part about writing? The hardest part about writing is doing it. That's one of the hardest parts. The other hardest part for me is that, and I've never come across anybody who has this same problem. Transitions are what stop me cold. My job is to make this work easy for my reader to read, and I have to make a stepping stone from the end of this paragraph to the beginning of the next paragraph. And that's what really stops me. How am I going to move it? How am I? Oh, it's terrible. And so I get up from my computer when I'm struggling like that. So that's the hardest part of writing.
But you've obviously conquered that.
Yeah, but if I would love it if I weren't stopped cold. I wouldn't have to. I would love it if I didn't have that as my worst part of writing.
Well, I would say the hardest part about writing is once you're published, you have to be marketing all the time, either online, offline, author appearances, speeches, craft fairs, wineries, those are fun to do, blogging or whatever. So you have to spend about 70% of your time marketing, which leaves a lot less time to get that book out a year.
Yes.
So, but it's reality. It is what it is.
A lot less time to get that book out, what?
Once a year.
Once a year.
Once a year. If you're writing a series, it's expected to do a book once a year, and you want to maintain the quality.
Yeah.
Mine aren't quite making it. I'm writing about once every year and a half. So, but I have a lenient publisher who says, I want it to be the best it can be. Don't worry about your deadline. How great is that?
That's wonderful.
Yeah, that's terrific.
Yes.
Yeah. So, it's fun. Your turn.
Yes, Jeri.
Well, you took the words out of my mouth because the hardest part of writing is promoting the book. I mean, Houghton Mifflin does a great job, but still, I
It's
have to
your
do
job,
book
too.
launch party and get things in the newspapers and website and blogging and Facebook and all this stuff.
Twitter.
It's just not. I mean, some authors love it. Some authors really, really love that, but I'm the more reclusive type, and I prefer to just write. I love doing the research. I love that part because I'm a historian, and I love writing it. But then when it comes to promotion, that's a whole. I would like to rent a whole other me to do the promotion.
Yes.
If that were possible, whoopee.
Yes. Okay.
So yeah, I agree. The promotion is really tough because of the time it takes.
It's a time consuming.
And it's a different
fun,
and
but
it's a different
time-consuming.
skill set, at least for me, because there's so much web stuff going on.
Okay.
So that's it. I did have a book trailer made, not by me, but it was made, so that's very nice. And I'm having teacher guides and lesson plans for my books, so someone else can do that.
Thank goodness.
Yeah.
I have a video of me dancing in a pink fringe dress. What went along with the blog that said, "What won't an author do to sell her books?" Yep, and it's up there on the website.
Oh, that is great.
I sold books.
Good. Robin.
It sounds like I'm not to the hardest part yet. It sounds like after January, when this book comes out, I'll be to the hardest part.
Yeah.
Well, the hardest part for me right now is having so many ideas and realizing that every single good scene that comes in my mind doesn't all have to go in one book. But I need to spread them out a little.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm discovering is that the story cannot be too complicated, and it also can't be 140,000 words long. So
Yeah.
that's been the hardest part so far for me, is toning it down.
That's good.
Toning it
Very
down.
good.
Okay.
So.
All right, and we don't have much more time, but so let's do this fast. What do you like about writing?
I love the research, which I've already said. As a historian, I get to
Well,
travel.
you don't have to be that
I
fast.
will repeat it. Okay. Sorry. Okay. I love the research, and
Okay.
I get to travel the whole country for all of my people. I travel the whole world for my research, and the people I get to meet, like the great-great-great-grandson of Noah Webster. I've corresponded with him. It's like touching the Constitution or the Declaration of
Wow.
Independence or something. And so many people of these family members, slave families, and anyway, I didn't meet Thomas Jefferson's family, but the point is, as a writer and as a researcher, because I'm writing nonfiction, I have to have the primary sources. So I find letters from Frederick Douglass. I mean, these are the primary things. And then I show them to kids. This is a primary source. My book is a secondary source. This is the primary.
Yeah.
So what was the question?
You've got it. You've got it.
Okay.
And we just have. I just have time to thank you, and to reiterate your websites again. Cindy Sample Books, Dying for a Dance, Dying for
And dying for a date.
a date, and
And soon to be coming, dying for a daiquiri.
Okay.
Oh.
CindySampleBooks.com. Jeri Chase Ferris, author. Jeri, Geri Chase Ferris.
Thank you.
And historical fiction for kids. For
Nonfiction.
Historical nonfiction.
Nonfiction.
Okay. And Robin Rice, RobinMartinezRice.com. And this is a picture of your cover of your
My possible cover.
possible cover. Okay. And I'm Rushton at Rushton Writes at RushtonWrites.com. Ladies, thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you.
And
Thank you,
I
Susan.
wish
Thank
you
you.
great success in
Thank you.
your writing careers.
And
I
you
think
too.
it's wonderful.
It's a
Thank
lot of
you.
fun.
Thank you.
And thank you very much for watching, and I will see you again.